I'm here to talk about 10 things to think about when bootstrapping your business. And on reflection, I should have made it 5 things because I've only got 30 minutes. So that makes it 3 minutes per thing. So I hope you don't mind if in this talk I'm going to talk quite quickly because we've got a lot to get through. And for those of you who've just joined us, I've just been telling everybody the one thing I absolutely love about doing this is questions, interaction, and thought. And that's because when you're bootstrapping a business, this is your number one lesson. We haven't got the money, so we'll have to think. So what I've come here to talk about is 10, 12 years of thinking that myself and my co-founder have done about how we've run You Can Book Me, and very happy to share it all with you today. Quick thing about You Can Book Me. We're a scheduling tool, online scheduling tool. The secret is in the name, You Can Book Me. We were the first calendar-based booking tool on the market a long time ago, 12 years ago. We've been going. And we've been profitable since 2017. So these are key things to bear in mind about bootstrapping a company, is at some point you have to focus on making money because nobody's giving you that money outside. Another thing, we've done 92 million bookings of all time. We do about 1 million to 1.5 million bookings. These are appointments that are being booked through our system every month, and 92 million in total. We've around 20,000 customers, and as I said, we're 100% bootstrapped, which means that myself, my co-founder Keith, own 100% of the company. These are some of our notable customers. Customers like Shopify, Uber, Yelp, they've actually been using us for a very, very long time, but we also have thousands of small businesses across Europe and North America that have been using us for a long time. And because of that, we're number 2 in the G2 crowd appointment scheduling quadrant. I don't know what number 1 is, but we are number 2. And that's because of our long-standing built-up reputation with customers. And I'm going to talk a lot about that in one of my lessons. Just recently, last week, in fact, I published an ebook, my first ebook called The Bootstrapper's Manual. I'm going to show you how you can access that at the end. But a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is contained in that manual. So there's lots of checklists and ideas and theories covering the essentials, the things that I think that if you're thinking about bootstrapping a company, or if you're in your first couple of years and you don't quite know what direction you need to go in, I'm covering a lot of the questions that we had to answer, which is going to help you make a decision. Then all of the things that if you grow your company and you end up going beyond just a single founder, what are the kind of things that you then need to think about, like hiring and managing a team? And then, as I said, this sort of checklist of questions that nobody can help you run your own business. If you're deciding to build your own business, it's literally your business, nobody else's. So I've listed loads of questions that will help you answer what your priorities are and what your risk and reward profile looks like, and hopefully help you make good strategic decisions about your business. So what I am going to cover in my now probably 26 minutes is how you build a business. Risk and reward and timing are the 2 things I think you need to consider. And then once you've got there, what product you're going to build, your sort of engineering framework, where you're going to get your customers from, and as I said, very critically for being a bootstrap business, how you're going to make a profit. And then if you have done all of that and you get to a point where you're going to be growing a company out of that, because this is one of my main themes, building a product, building a business, and building a company are 3 separate things. How do you, lessons of what we've learned over many, many years of hiring people. So let's dive into it, risk and reward. As I said, bootstrapping is 100% owning a business where it's been funded through debt and revenue. And by that, I mean, I'm probably a bit of a purist. I don't think bootstrapping a company counts if you are a second-time entrepreneur or a third-time entrepreneur and you've got €1 million that you would then want to put into your next venture, because you are basically the funder. You're the private investor into that. What I mean by this is really simple. It's about taking money from customers and using that money to reinvest in your business to keep going. So it's funded by customers and, if you can, some debt. Although I've been hearing from people here in Germany, the government also gives out quite generous public grants as well, which is amazing. Certainly didn't get any of that in the UK, but that's obviously another story. I'm not here to officially apologise, but I am sorry about the UK. So the other thing about bootstrapping is that I don't think it's a gamble. it's not something where you're just kind of throwing yourself into a venture and hoping that, your cards come up. I think it's much more like a calculated gamble. And by that I mean it's less about sort of poker and more about bridge. So who here plays bridge? Nobody here plays bridge. One person here plays bridge. It's a great game, isn't it? It's an absolute great game. And the reason why is because, and look at these people, they're not gamblers. They're not gamblers. They're very happy doing this, probably every day. It can get very addictive, bridge. And the reason why is because you have all the cards on the table. You know what resources are there. You're just working out what you've got. And so in terms of a relationship between you or an investor, you know yourself better than any investor. You know what high cards you've got in your hand, what low cards you've got in your hand. And that is the point about bootstrapping. You can bet on yourself. You're not having to ask anybody else to take a risk on you. You are the one deciding whether you think you've got it in you to do what you want to do. Two more risks, I would say, slightly more philosophical. The first is permanent uncertainty. It is a risk because it can lead to stress and mental well-being problems because you're never going to be 100% about anything. That's something we've lived with for 15 years. You don't end up knowing whether your startup or your product is really going to fly out the window, and you have to get used to that. You have to get used to continually betting on yourself and your decisions. The second, though, is regret. What happens if you don't do it? What happens if you have a burning desire to do the product that you always think is going to solve the issue, and then you never do it? And that could be something where, again, at the end of your life, would you regret not taking the leap? So to summarize, in terms of risks and rewards, these are all of the things that could go wrong. If you've bootstrapped your company, you're seeing all of these things. You'll all relate to them differently. And then in terms of how you would deal with them, it's this sort of thing. Would you have to move back in with your parents? Would you have to basically not have that fancy car? Nobody can tell you what the risk or reward profile is. It's an entirely personal thing. In terms of nothing ventured, nothing gained, you've got money, time, and happiness as your options, as your levers. And then these are the things that you could get if you make the right choice. You could get more money. You get to work with people. You get to own the thing that you're doing. But it's a marathon, and it's based on those endless, uncertain sprints. So what does all of that depend on? Well, it depends usually on opportunity and timing. So ideas. Everybody knows that ideas aren't worth half as much as essentially the capacity to execute. And that's what we've learned inside You Can Book Me, that you need to be able to deliver on whatever it is that you want to do. So very simple. Opportunity to basically be a successful business is a matter of execution, your ability to execute divided by how much time you've got. And that timing and that opportunity is going to be determined by all the personal stuff, all of the things that you know, your burning desire to build a product, who you are, how old you are. I mean, it makes a big difference in terms of risk profile. A 21-year-old can move back in with their parents, but a 41-year-old moving back in with their parents, there's a sort of a range there of what you want to do. Your resources, like what do you actually need to know in order, are you a developer? Obviously, I'm sure a lot of people here are, in which case you have the keys to a lot of ability to build a product that a non-technical person isn't able to do. Your competition, you know less about, but you have to basically figure out whether whatever it is that you want to do, is it such a compelling problem that nobody else will have thought about it, or maybe everybody's trying to build the same thing? And then ultimately judgment. And that really comes down to you as a founder and as a person. Like, do you think you can do this? How quickly can you do this? What are your skills? How motivated are you to do it? So I came up with this: timing is always perfect in hindsight, which I know is just a sort of a kind of a clever thing to say. But if you think about it, in hindsight, everything took exactly the right amount of time because that's how long it took. So you're never going to be able to say, oh, I bet we can spool up an MVP in 1 month and then we can basically get to 1 million by the end of the year. Actually, it's going to take however long it takes. And that's up to you to decide based on, what the market is, what your opportunity is, and what your personal circumstances are. And those rules don't really change. So, product vision. What are you actually going to build? Steve Jobs, I would rather gamble on our vision than make a Me Too product. Now, this is kind of a very big insight for us because we've been building You Can Book Me for over 10 years. And previous to that, we built a whole load of other products. So I've got a lot to say about this. And really, again, my opinions about product vision has only come as a result of hindsight. Whereas for you all starting who want to start building a product, you get to learn this lesson and hopefully capitalize on it better than we did previously. So a Me Too product, well, this is an illustration of the competitive landscape that we're in. So we compete against all these scheduling tools. Everybody says that it's going to be free and easy and whatever, back and forth emails and goodbye scheduling, blah, blah, blah. So how do we distinguish ourselves? And how do you sit there and go, well, I'm going to build a product which is going to be better than any of that? So recently we've been doing a lot of work inside You Can Book Me to work out what our product vision is. And these are our conclusions, that a product vision shouldn't just be about basically an also-ran. We shouldn't just be planning to be the number 2 tool. We shouldn't just be saying, oh, we can build a time jump to calendar grid better than somebody else. I think that also, particularly, when you get into the world of building, of engineering, you tend to end up thinking, well, here's our roadmap. These are our tickets. These are our epics. These are our initiatives. This is what we're going to do. And then you start to be very process driven. And you put all of that into your roadmap and you think, oh, that's the vision, because that's like an 18-month roadmap. But that's not a vision. That's just basically a to-do list. And then finally, and I think that this is where the learning, the insight for us has come from, is that these are all sort of screenshots of You Can Book Me from many years ago. So if you've been around for a long time, over 10 years, of course you're going to refactor. Of course you're going to redesign. Of course you're going to improve. If you don't, you're going to go out of business. But that is not a vision. That is not, that's your day job, basically. That's what you just need to be doing on top of continuing to see whether what you're offering is something that's compelling. So this is my suggestion about what I think a product vision should look like. This is the criteria. The first is, does it solve a real problem? So I've got opinions about this, about problem solving. I think they're either human or they're machine-based. So we have a lot of problems in the startup world, in the software world, where we're not solving real problems, we're solving problems created by machines. This is why AI is so incredible, because AI is coming along and just sweeping away a whole load of solutions we had that other bits of software did, because AI says, done that, sorted that. That's why it's so radical. Because it wasn't a real problem in the first place. It was just, a mechanical software problem. Whereas real problems, human problems, are things that will probably always be around. And then how we solve them is the process of elimination, of innovation, sorry. So you have to understand really at the heart of the jobs to be done framework what your problem is. Now, the second thing is, it's got to be a compelling solution. And by that, I mean, it needs to really offer a 10 times improvement to how it's being done before. It needs to be something that feels like magic. Otherwise, you're just offering something that might be slightly better in terms of quality or might be cheaper in terms of price. But is it compelling? Is it going to be something that's going to launch you into the marketplace with your product? And then finally, has to stay relevant over time. So with online scheduling, obviously, we're looking at AI. We're looking at all of the things that are going to help us continue to solve the same problem, which is find a time for people to meet, but to do it with the different tools that are now available, like AI. If you ground your solution in something which is very specific to the date and time that you thought of it, it'll probably basically stop being relevant after a while. Right, engineering. If you start your MVP, so who's here basically started building a product? Okay, about 20%. So the good news on day one of doing it is you have 100% code coverage, no bugs, and 100% compliance. And I know what you're thinking at that point. This is great. Let's just keep going on this basis. But I can tell you, after a few years of doing it, those 3 things start to become harder and harder to prioritize. Now, I'm here as CEO. In the audience here is Keith, the CTO. And between the two of us, there he is, right in the middle. Between the two of us, but mostly because of Keith as the developer, we have built loads of products that had 100% code coverage, no bugs, and 100% compliance because they had no customers. They were basically commercially irrelevant, but they taught us a huge amount over 20 years about how to build products. So as I said, you separate out your ability to spool up an MVP and a product, and you have to, the real question you've got is not what product to build, it's like, what business can I build on top of one of these products? Now, another thing that I've learned about Keith or any CTO or developer is that don't let them write all of the user messages on your app, because this is Keith's. Sorry, the owner of this configuration does not have right permissions on the target calendar. That was one of our learning lessons, is that as an engineer, you're going to think very differently about the engineering of your product than maybe a customer would or a UX designer. So we were so appalled at this, we actually put it on a t-shirt for him. There's probably a word in German that means that entire thing, but for a lot of users, it meant absolutely nothing. But this is what we were up against when we did finally launch You Can Book Me. My point about all those other apps was that You Can Book Me didn't happen by accident. It wasn't like, woohoo, look, we just found an online scheduling tool that worked really well. We'd actually built nine tools before then that didn't work. And it's so you know it when you see it, when you build something that has this kind of, I don't know how much you can see on this screen, but this kind of massive exponential growth, because scheduling is by its very nature, it's a very viral loop kind of product. And so as a result, we went through over 12 years. So this is what the product looks like now, obviously beautiful, but that hides 4 different changes in infrastructure, 3 major rewrites, going from a back-end Java application, server-side application, to now a React application in the client. We've changed subscription software 4 times. We've gone through CRMs and all sorts of things because we're trying to figure out how to optimize and reduce the costs inside the company. So this is, you don't think that you're going to get to there. You think that your product is going to stay perfect forever as you imagined it. But over 12 years, it just keeps going. And obviously, we're at like 5 million euros now. Like we've got money for this. We're doing well. We're profitable. But still, it's not what we imagined over that 10 years ago when we thought we could just spool something up. We also have actually achieved SOC 2 and ISO 27000, which is no mean feat in terms of that type of infrastructure and support that we're required. So you can make your choices inside engineering. And the good news is, as well as the robustness of what we're doing, which is we also have 0 downtime inside You Can Book Me because we're doing all of these bookings, is that Keith has written a chapter for my bootstrapping manual where he covers these sorts of topics, like technology should you be choosing if you wanted to build your own product, his opinions about the object model, Conway's law, if you haven't heard of it, it's a really interesting way of thinking about how software teams work together, his opinion about monoliths. And I would really recommend it, particularly if you're a non-technical founder, to try to understand the perspective of an engineer and a CTO that has been in this game for a very long time. Of course, AI being the big topic. So you also get to hear his opinions about AI for UI, what we're now looking at as a space where there's a whole load of software company applications that are going to be disrupted again. They themselves were the disruptors 15 years ago before, when SaaS started to come up. And now they're all going to be disrupted again, which is very exciting. And AI portability. So look at all of that at the end. But my point is that engineering is a non-trivial thing, as you all know. It's something that you can't just do something where you think, oh, Zapier, an Airtable can connect up and we're going to do it. Because at the end of the day, the biggest questions around infrastructure, architecture, and DevOps and security remain. And that's all because customers demand it. We do all of that because we are serving our customers. So I'm not always right, but I'm still awesome. And that's the whole point about building a business, is that you can't fight with your customers. You can't fight with other people's opinions about your product and just say they're wrong. I mean, you can, but then you're running a hobby, not a business. Now, this is an example in 2012. So this is obviously 10 years ago. An email from somebody who said, wow, excellent software, easy to use, performs superbly. Those great reviews were right, highly recommended, many thanks. Now, it didn't take me long to find this review. It's not like I haven't got this framed or anything in my office. I just Googled 10 years ago the kind of feedback frenzy emails we were getting, and this is a very common one. So if anybody wants to know how we grew You Can Book Me, it's because of this kind of feedback. People loved our software. We doubled down on it. We listened to it a lot. We did loads of tickets. we built what they wanted, and we carried on going. And that is a very strong mantra for any bootstrapping company, is that you have to follow what your customers tell you to do. But that's not to say you do every single customer. I think at the time we didn't understand how important customer segments were. So you have to understand who is going to buy your software in the first place and what group do they belong to. Is it B2B? Is it B to small business? Is it B to consumers? Is it B to the voluntary sector or the education sector or the enterprise sector? Or are you selling to an agency or to affiliate schemes who are basically selling it for you? Or indeed, if you're an API, product, so that you're kind of taking it off the front end business side altogether. Now, all of these things really matter about how you then define your product and how you market it. And as I said, for You Can Book Me, we really focused on the customer experience of using our tool. This is G2 Crowd. Every so often, every couple of months, we do a blast asking people to give us reviews, and we have loads of reviews. Now, these aren't reviews from people who are attending big conferences and talking about SaaS and being on TechCrunch. These are people who are just using online appointment scheduling software, and they like our software. And again, you have to keep it real, keep it human, about who you're actually serving. And you're not serving VCs or investors or fancy startup people. You're actually serving people who are going to give you money. Another thing I would say about customers that we invested a lot in that you need to think about is your support. You have to make sure that they know how to use your tool, that your tool is easy to use, and that you're not going to spend all your hard-earned money on hiring people to support them because your product is complicated. And that's, again, a lesson that we had to learn early on to make our company as profitable as we could. So this is a framework that we use inside You Can Book Me, which basically helps keep the guardrails on. The customer is always right. And if in doubt, ask them. You have to acquire customers, you have to serve customers, and you have to keep them. They're the beginning, the middle, and the end of any business. And any bootstrapper will tell you that. And I think that the danger is that with companies that have been funded, is that the customer becomes your investor. The customer and those demands that the investor make become the thing that the founder cares about. And if you take that away, if you ask any bootstrapper, they will only ever talk about their customers. And it's because of that loop: acquire, serve, and keep. Okay, once you've got the customers and you're really good at serving them and that you keep them, hopefully you should start to make a profit. It took a while for You Can Book Me because we're very low lifetime value. So we take very small amount of money per customer, which is why we have thousands of them. So it took us a while to ramp it up. But we broke even in 2016, 17. So it was 6 years of running the business before we could actually say that we had made a profit. So I thought I'd give you just a little bit of a way back then kind of illustration of how that feels. So this was in 2009, 2010. Our previous scheduling tool was called, well, it's still around, When Is Good. And then a year later, when we launched You Can Book Me, I know it's hard to see here, but basically the numbers show you what it felt like. So in the year after we launched You Can Book Me, we had taken £1,167.60 from When Is Good, and actually in half a year, we'd already exceeded that with You Can Book Me. So once you launch multiple products and you start to see atomically, I mean, we're talking about very small amounts of money. This was a year before we did any other kind of borrowing money or giving up our jobs or doing anything. The growth of You Can Book Me was just phenomenal. I mean, you can just see it in those pie charts. It was just the yellow You Can Book Me Premium. It just started to dominate. So once you've got product market fit at that very early stage with a product that you know is going to fly out the door, you wouldn't do that now with online scheduling because there's loads of tools, but there's going to be something that you've thought of that doesn't exist right now. As soon as it starts flying out the door like You Can Book Me did, you know you've got a business that you can bootstrap. So once you've built that initial profitable product, customers are giving you money for it, you then have to build what I call a profit stack across the rest of your company. So the first starts with your traditional sort of corporate finance. But then you also have to think about the people that you are hiring and how they are working within your business. And then you have to look at the actual business model itself. And my view about how you become profitable inside a company, at the stage where you're making hundreds of thousands of pounds, is that you need to be profitable across all these three things. You can't have a really difficult business model, even if, you can't have one without the other, or at least I haven't seen it. So for You Can Book Me, again, it's not accidental why we're profitable. We're profitable because we're freemium, so we're very core kind of product-led growth business where people use our product for free, and they can do forever, or they also can upgrade. We're self-service. All that effort and work that we did on support means that we have very little low-touch interaction with our customers, and then we've got that viral loop. So you can find elements of that in every single product, and you have to maximize your ability to push those forward in order to grow, self-fund, and also be profitable in the end. Quick recap on what profit is. Profit is that your income exceeds your costs, that you can repeat that, and you can repeat it with a very low cost in order to continue to sell the same product, and that you can grow. If you do all of that, you'll be profitable. But these are the things that are not profitable. You can't just spend money on sort of pray and spray marketing or hiring or anything else that you think is going to really help. And it's not targeted and it's not strategic. If you do that, you're just going to waste a lot of money and you won't make any profit. If you don't pay yourself, then you're not profitable. So you have to, at some point as a founder, look at the thing that you're doing and decide, is that going to give you an annual income? And then once you think about how much you get paid by the company that you currently work for, you won't be profitable inside your own company until you can basically match that income and more, pay other people. If you don't pay yourself, you're volunteering. Or no customers, simple as that. Same point, customers at the beginning, the middle, and the end of any business. So I just want to quickly, before I've got a chance to take some questions, go through who to hire. I've just realized that this conference is very much about recruitment and hiring, and there's a lot of people talking about it, wanting to hire people, putting up notices, talking. So I'm talking to obviously a very informed group here, and I'd be interested to know what you all think about this. This is my take on it. Steve Jobs hired the wrong guy. That is what he had admitted in 1996. That almost destroyed Apple. Basically, that guy ran Apple for 10 years, kicked Steve Jobs out. Apple nearly went into administration. They had to hire Steve back to turn it around. So who you hire is the biggest and most important thing that any business can do. And it doesn't matter what size. So it doesn't matter if you're a single founder and you're hiring a second person to work with you, or you're Apple. It will still destroy your company if you're not careful. And if you're bootstrapping, it becomes a very visceral thing because it's real customer money that you're spending on somebody, which comes from a real bank balance, paying for somebody's salary. And these are the kind of characteristics that we've seen over years and years, not just in our company, but in others as well, are the kind of people that could really harm your business. People who block other people's work, people who escalate or delegate. So essentially they look busy, but all they're doing is telling the managers that they're too busy for strategic because they're so busy delivering, and then they tell the people who are contributing that they're too busy being strategic to contribute. And at the end of the day, you're thinking, hang on, what are you actually doing? And then lastly, problem creators, people who create problems in order to solve them. And all of these people are around and sometimes do very well for a very long period of time. And good luck to them. I don't have any problem with those people at all, but I don't want them working for me in my company because my company is small and bootstrapped and we basically can't afford them. Instead, we look for high-performing problem solvers. These are people who are driven to solve problems regardless, and they do it at a very high-performing level. And if you find those people, and we're very lucky to have lots of them inside You Can Book Me, we end up being very optimized for growth and productivity and high performance. Now, in terms of how to hire, I was talking about this earlier, different models suit timing and will suit timing and money. So essentially, there's clearly no money at the very beginning, so you're not hiring anybody. You're probably just doing fractional contracting and freelance work. You might even be doing that yourself whilst you're trying to get your thing off the ground. And eventually you might want to be employing people. So there's no right or wrong about this. This is the danger, though, when you start to think about employing people there's a huge number of government restrictions in any country, and You Can Book Me hires. We hire in the UK, Germany, Spain, Portugal, and France, and the US. We have an entity in the US as well. So we hire in lots of different countries, and we employ people. So we know an awful lot about this in each different domestic country. And I'm just really sort of saying this to be realistic about what employment really entails. And then the final thing I would say about how to hire is that you have to feed really good diversity, sort of open and inclusion practices in your actual recruitment process. You can't do that at the end of the process. You need to start thinking about it at the start of the process. Best way to do that is to be transparent. So we're very transparent about our pay bands and about our culture and what we do. We publish the pay bands for our jobs, but then more importantly, inside the company, we have an open salary structure so everybody knows how much everybody gets paid. We now work with independent recruiters and talent sources to avoid bias from inside the company. And then I believe this very strongly, that culture fit is not about hiring people that make you feel comfortable. It's actually about making sure that you've got a very, very broad range of backgrounds and perspectives, and it does make company culture healthier, and that is what is a fit for us. And then finally, on when to hire, again, to give you a bit of illustration, sort of ramping up from 2011, where we didn't have anybody. We started with freelancers, then we made our first hires in the UK, then we hired in the US, then we hired in Spain, then we hired more in the UK, then we started to be able to work with third-party outsource. So we have outsourced QA, we have outsourced support, outsourced web dev, and a bit of outsourced finance. All very deliberate, all because of the nature of the size of our company, what we're trying to achieve. And then recently, the employer of record, the kind of third-party employment vehicles are all around, and we use those as well. So there's lots and lots of options. And again, you can't just think, oh, I'm just going to get freelancers to run my startup, because if you are planning on building a company which is going to continue to grow, you have to think about that model. So bootstrap principles: go more slowly, assess each risk according to reward, and judge what we need to do by the timing and growth of the business. That's what we've always done, partly based on founder skills. So of course, Keith is an engineer, I'm an operations expert. If you have those two inside your startup, fantastic, but it means that you need product designers, or you need customer success people, marketers. You look at your network, which is clearly an important first point, and then you have to work on the basis of low risk. By hiring employees, our product had turned into a business which had turned into a company of people. Product, business, company. I've said it several times in this talk. They're three separate things. You might love building products. You might hate running a company. It really matters because it's your life. Nobody can tell you whether you want to do it or not. So finally, building a team. Now, this is something I definitely have learned from running You Can Book Me. It was a bit of a revelation to me, actually, that building a team, don't worry, I've actually got a way to stop them, because they're fairly mesmerizing, but after a while you've got to stop. Building a team has been one of the most fun and amazing and revelatory things about running You Can Book Me. I love it. I love the people we work with. I bet you all work in great teams as well. Really, when you build a company, that's what you're doing. You're building a team. And then you can actually do more as a team than you can as an individual. But the things I've learned are the three separate aspects of building a team. So you've got high-performing contributors, and you can have them. Some of the best paid people in our company are high-performing contributors because they're so good at what they do and they love what they do. And as a company, we've protected that quality of what they want to do. Managers, you can have amazing people managers, people who love cultivating professional development and the skills of a team and nurturing that team to a point where they're going to be performing better as the sum total. And then also leadership and people who understand about strategic objectives and where we're going and being able to articulate them. And you need all three for a team to work really, really effectively. The other thing that we have done in terms of incentivizing our team is that we have focused a lot on culture. So we have all the benefits that you'd expect for a remote company. As I said, we have lots of transparency, and we have a very kind of flat way of organizing decision making. There's lots of ownership inside You Can Book Me. We have prioritized long term because we're bootstrapping. So we hired people 5 years ago, and they now get paid double what they got paid 5 years ago, because when you hire them, you're saying, look, we're on a journey here and you have to be with us in order to benefit. And to show that, we've done profit share for the last 6 years as well. So when we make a profit, we're able to pay a percentage back to everybody in the company. And this is our team. This is our team in France. We did a summit, which we call them, which is the first time we got together after a couple of years of obviously COVID. So to summarize, these are the things that I've been covering. How to build a business. Only you know what risks you're prepared to take for the rewards that you want. And the timing and your judgment are the things that you need to think about. Secondly, in terms of a product, customers will pay for something which is compelling. So you need to stay focused and stay ahead of that. Don't just get complacent about the fact that because you love your product, everybody else is going to. But if you do that, you also have to know the difference between the roadmap of what you want to build and stay focused on the vision of what you're trying to deliver long term. And then my simplest advice is, if you don't know who to hire or what you get them to do, just don't hire, really. If you can avoid it, don't hire people. I mean, I love people, obviously, and that's not exactly a message for this conference. But generally speaking, if you're trying to bootstrap a company, try to keep it as lean and as small as possible. Because building a product is different to building a business, which is also different to building a company. So this is my biggest bootstrapping challenge. What is the hurdles that you are facing? This is my question to you. And I'd love to know that in the questions. I think somebody's coming around with a microphone. And in the meantime, this is my bootstrapping manual. So if you want to know more about that and read more about the in-depth logic of that, hopefully like the biggest QR code in the world. I'm slightly freaked out by the fact that this is a cinema screen. So it's probably bigger than your actual phones. Is it working? Great. So we've got a few minutes for questions. I'd love to know what you think.